Hi, it's Munawara again. Hope you enjoyed my jasmine video and thank you for those who commented. If you haven't seen my video, click on the link above so you can have a look too. Today I'm going to show you how to make a sugar flower rose. Now this is a bit more challenging than the jasmine, but I'll go through step by step to make it easy for you. Let's start with looking at the equipment. So first we need a plastic sheath. This is used to cover the sugar paste once it's rolled out to stop it from drying out. You also need a foam mat, a plastic board, and grip for the plastic board so that it stops it from moving when you're rolling out. Next you need 24 gauge wire, rose petal cutter, which comes in various different sizes depending on the size of the rose you want to make. You need a rolling pin, I'm using a plastic one, and the ball tool, which is used for ruffling, number 1 size paintbrush, Stemtex tape, Trex butter, egg white, and some corn flour. You can make a small pouch for the corn flour so you can easily dust when you're using to dust the foam mat. Finally, you also need the sepal cutter and of course the sugar paste. Okay, now we are ready to start. Firstly, let's get the wire prepared. Cut the wire to the desired size. So depending on the size of the bouquet you want to make, you want to have a longer stem or a shorter stem. And make a small hook on one end of this, and this helps to stabilize when you're putting it through the bud. Now the important part is getting the sugar paste ready. The sugar paste has to be nice and soft and stretchy, which helps us make the petals to be really thin and very much real lifelike. To do this, you need to use the egg whites and the Trex butter and mix it and mold it until you get that soft, stretchy paste. This will take a bit of time, but you need to make sure it's nice and soft and stretchy before you start cutting the petals out. Once you have mixed it well, keep it covered so it doesn't dry out. Now let's make the bud shape which forms the basis of the rose. For this you need to take a small bowl of the sugar paste that you have just mixed and mold it into shape just like I'm doing on the video. You don't need any cutters for this, you do it by hand. Once you've got the desired bulb shape, you put the wire through it until the hook part is just inside the bud, and just cover the hook and shape it by hand. Now you have to let this dry for about 5 days because it needs to be nice and dry before we can apply the petals to make the rose. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to make one I prepared earlier. I'm going to apply some Trix butter on the board to prevent the paste from sticking when I'm rolling it out. Now I'm going to show you how to add the colours for the rose. Using the sugar paste mixture that you softened and stretched out, divide it in half and put away one half back inside the cover. Take the second half and add the colour you desire. I'm using purple on this video, but you can use any colour that you want. So mix the colour really well. The first mix needs to be fairly dark, and this forms the center of the rose. So if you notice any roses, the center of it is quite dark, and as it gets to the outer side of the rose, it gets lighter in color. And this is the same effect that we're going to create when we make our rose. Now divide the darker color in half and keep one half with you, and to the second half add half from the remaining white color. This lightens the color and this will make the middle layer of the petals. Now you have to repeat the process again by halving it and keeping one half, which is the middle layer, and then the remaining half mix with the remaining white color you have, which makes the lightest color, which forms the outer part of the rose. Now I put them next to each other, you can see the differences in colour of the three different layers. So the next step is now to make the central part of the rose, which is actually the bud of the rose. For this you need the darkest colour of the colours you just mixed. You can put the other two colours under cover so that it doesn't dry out. Now before you roll the sugar paste out, apply some Trix butter on the board so that it doesn't stick to the board when you're rolling. You have to roll it out really thin so that you get realistic looking petals, which are very thin normally. For this layer we need 4 petals. I'm going to use the cutter to cut 4 petals out. Once you cut them, you need to transfer this to the foam mat. But before you transfer the foam mat, make sure you have dusted the foam mat with some corn flour so that the petals don't stick to the foam mat. Okay, now we are ready to create the ruffles on the petals, and for this you need the ball tool. There are 2 ends to the ball tool, the small end and the large end. You use the small edge to create the ruffles on the edge of the petal, and the large end to create a little ruffle in the middle, which is more of a slight dip. As you can see me repeating the process on all the 4 petals so that we have all 4 petals which are similar. To start putting the flower together. For this we are using the egg white as glue. Using the paintbrush, brush egg whites on the bottom edge and a thin line in the center of each petal. Now use the first petal to cover the top of the bud, so you're covering all the white parts of the bud. Now apply the second petal on the opposite side of the first one. And the third one on the other side. Fourth one opposite to the third, so that the tip of the bud is fully covered, and you can shape it by hand to create a slight open look so that it looks like the center of a rosebud. Once you've applied all the 4 petals, you have to let it dry for at least 3 hours before you can apply the next layer. If you don't want to create a full rose or a half rose, you can at this point and have it just as a bud, which are also used in bouquets when you're making sugar flower decorations. If you're going to stop at this point, you need to apply the sepal and the hip, which I will show at the end of this video. As this video is about making a full rose, I'm going to now go to the second step, which is making the half rose. And to do this, we need to add the second layer of the petals. So for this, you're going to use the medium color, so the middle color that you mixed earlier. And the process is more or less similar to the first layer. And as we did before, roll it out nice and thin. The paste is nice and soft and stretchy. If it's gone a little bit hard, mix a bit of tricks and egg white to stretch it out and make it soft and stretchy again. Using the same size cutter, cut 6 petals out. Once you have cut all the petals, transfer it to the foam mat, just as we did before. And we're going to repeat the same process of ruffling using the ball tool. Once you have got all the petals ruffled, we are ready to apply the next layer. So apply the egg white as before. And start adding to the bud that we made earlier, one petal at a time, just as we did in opposite direction to the previous petal, and repeat until all 6 petals are applied to the bud. Shape them with your hand to produce the more fresh flower look, so that some of the petals are slightly open and others a bit more closed. This needs to be left to dry for at least 1 day before you can add the next layer if you're going to make a full rose. As before, if you want to stop at this point and just have a half rose, which can also be used in bouquets, but you again need to apply the sepal and the hip, which I will show you at the end of the video. Now I'm going to make the full rose, which is done by adding the final layer of petals. For this, we're going to use the lightest color we mixed earlier. Again, make sure it's nice and soft and stretchy before you roll it out, and if it has gone dry, As I said before, add some egg white and tricks to soften it up again. Again, roll it out nice and thin as before. And once this is done, cut out 16 petals this time using the same size rose petal cutter. Once you have cut the petals, transfer them to the foam mat. To do the ruffling process, just as we did with the other 2 layers. Once you have got all the petals ruffled and ready, using a cocktail stick, roll edges of 8 petals to the left side and the remaining 8 to the right side, just as I'm doing on the video, and this gives the more open look of the rose. Once all the petals are ready, apply egg white so that it's ready to be stuck onto the half rose that we have made earlier. For this layer, you need to turn the half rose upside down, which makes it easier for you to apply the petals. And again, you apply 1 petal at a time in opposite directions to each petal, as we did with the previous 2 layers. Once you've applied all the 16 petals, let it dry for at least another day before we apply the sepal and the hip. This is to make sure that the rose is nice and stable before we apply them, otherwise it is easy for the petals to come off. Okay, now it's time to add the sepal and the hip. And for this you need the sugar paste ready, softened and stretchy as before, using egg white and Trex butter again. Then add green color. I'm using moss green. Mix the colors well until you get a nice dark green color. Once you're happy with the color, start to roll it out just as we did before, nice and thin. Then using the sepal cutter, cut out the shape. You only need one sepal per rose. I'm cutting out a few more for a few other roses I have made earlier. Transfer the cut sepal onto the foil mat again, and using the ball tool just ruffle the tip to give it a more realistic look. Once you have done this, get your rose that you have made earlier. It should be nice and dry by now, but be very gentle because it is quite fragile. Now apply egg white to the sepal. Pass the sepal through the wire to the bottom of the rose. You can use a cocktail stick to just spread it out and stick it onto the bottom of the rose. Once you have done this, you need to make the hip. And for this, you need to take a small ball of green sugar paste, push it through the center of the wire and shape it with your hand at the bottom of the rose. Let this dry for about an hour. And then you are ready to apply the Semtex tape to cover. So this is the completed rose. It is beautiful and elegant, and it will stand out in any bouquet that you make. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have learned how to make a sugar flower rose now. In the next video I will show you how to make the rose leaves and how to make a small spray using rosebud, half bud and a full rose and leaves. Thank you for watching. Please comment, like and subscribe. Bye for now.